The Wolf emerges April 28, 1943, 50°N north, 43° west, North Atlantic. The sea is black glass beneath a moonless sky. Oberleutnant zur See Klaus Hartmann stands in the conning tower of U-264, salt spray stinging his face as the diesel engines rumble beneath his feet. The merchant convoy ahead cuts through the water like a herd of elephants, slow, vulnerable, oblivious. 43 ships in neat columns, their silhouettes barely visible against the darker void of the horizon. Hartmann grips the cold steel rail. His boat has been submerged for 16 hours, trailing this convoy at periscope depth, waiting for this moment. Now, surfaced in darkness, U-264 slices through the swells at 17 knots, faster than any Allied destroyer can manage in these seas. The mathematics are simple, elegant, deadly. Submerged, his boat crawls at 7 knots, deaf and nearly blind, vulnerable to the escorts' ASDIC pings that bounce off the pressure hull like metal hammers. But on the surface, at night, the U-boat becomes a ghost. Range to convoy? Hartmann's voice cuts through the wind. 8,000 meters, Herr Kaleu, the watch officer reports, eyes pressed to the targeting binoculars. The tactic is Admiral Donitz's masterpiece, perfected over 3 years of brutal learning. Surface attacks at night render ASDIC useless. The British underwater detection system cannot find what rides above the waves. The U-boat's low profile makes visual detection nearly impossible, even with searchlights sweeping the darkness. And if spotted, the boat simply opens the throttles and runs. No corvette, no frigate can catch a surface Type 7C in open water. Hartmann checks his watch. 0147 hours, the witching hour. Around him, across hundreds of miles of Black Atlantic, 32 other U-boats are converging on convoy ONS-5. Wolfpack Fink, Wolfpack Star, Wolfpack Amsel. The largest concentration of submarine power ever assembled against a single convoy. BDU, U-Boat Command, has been directing them by radio for 2 days, Dönitz himself orchestrating the kill from his headquarters in Paris. All tubes ready, Herr Kaleu. Hartmann nods. The torpedoes are set shallow, 4 meters depth. In minutes, those 43 ships will become funeral pyres lighting up the night. He raises his hand to give the attack order. What Oberleutnant Hartmann doesn't know, what no U-boat commander in the Atlantic knows, is that every radio transmission from BDU, every acknowledgement he has sent, every position report, has been painting a target on his boat. And in the plotting room of HMS Duncan, sailing 3 miles ahead of the convoy, that target is about to become lethally clear. The invisible hunter Lieutenant Commander Peter Gretton stands in the cramped operations room of HMS Duncan, watching the plot table with the intensity of a man playing chess with death. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of his team. On the illuminated table, magnetic markers show the convoy's position, course, and speed. What holds Gretton's attention is something else entirely. FDF contact, bearing 270, signal strength 3, the radio operator calls out, headphones pressed tight against his ears. The rating at the plot table places a red marker on the bearing line, 270, due west. 30 seconds later, second contact, bearing 315, signal strength 2. Another marker, northwest. The pattern is forming. High-frequency direction finding, HFDF, called Huff-Duff by the men who operate it, is the weapon the Germans don't believe exists. A rotating loop antenna mounted above Duncan's bridge, connected to sensitive receivers that can detect radio transmissions up to 30 miles away. Every time a U-boat transmits to BDU, every time it receives orders, the electromagnetic pulse travels through the air at the speed of light, and the FH-3 receiver catches it. Third contact bearing 292. And the plot is clear now. At least 3 U-boats forming a patrol line ahead of the convoy's track, waiting in ambush positions. Gretton's jaw tightens. This is the revolution the Germans haven't grasped. Their greatest tactical advantage has become their fatal vulnerability. Dönitz demands constant communication from his boats, sighting reports, position updates, weather conditions, contact acknowledgements. The micromanagement that allows BDU to coordinate Wolfpack attacks requires hundreds of radio transmissions per day, and every single transmission is a beacon. Signal strength increasing on bearing 270. Estimate range 12 miles. 12 miles. Close. Dangerously close. Action stations, Gretton orders quietly. Throughout the destroyer, alarm bells shatter the night. Men pour from hammocks, pulling on life vests, racing to gun positions and depth charge racks. The 4-inch guns swing toward bearing 270, crews loading star shells, special rounds that burst high above the water, deploying brilliant magnesium flares on small parachutes. The Germans believe they're invisible, Gretton thinks. They believe the darkness protects them. They're about to learn otherwise. Increase speed to 28 knots, steer 270, prepare star shell barrage. Duncan's engines roar to full power. The destroyer heels into the turn, bow wave climbing, as she accelerates toward the unseen enemy. Behind her, the convoy steams on, unaware of the submarines creeping toward them through the darkness. Unaware of the electronic war being fought in frequencies beyond human hearing. On the plot table, another red marker appears, then another. The HF-DF bearings are multiplying. Not 3 U-boats, 7, maybe more. Get me a position on that primary contact, Gretton snaps. I want range, bearing, and firing solution. The ratings work the calculations. Speed over ground, transmission interval, signal strength degradation, the mathematics of invisible warfare. Estimate range now 8 miles and closing, sir. 8 miles. In 18 minutes at current speed, Duncan will be on top of the U-boat. Unless the submarine detects the destroyer first. Unless it crash dives and disappears into the black depths. Gretton knows what Hartmann doesn't, that the hunted has become the hunter and the weapon is information traveling at the speed of light. Contact U-264's conning tower watch sees it first, a darker shadow against the eastern horizon growing larger. Destroyer! The lookout screams. Bearing 090, range 5,000 meters. Hartmann spins, binoculars rising. His blood turns to ice. The British destroyer is charging directly toward them, cutting through the swells at impossible speed. Not searching, not patrolling, coming straight for them. How did they... The question dies in his throat. There's no time. Alarm! Dive! Dive! Hartmann shouts into the voice pipe. The klaxon shrieks. The deck watch tumbles through the hatch as seawater floods the ballast tanks with a roar like Niagara Falls. Hartmann drops through the circular opening, spinning the wheel to dog the hatch shut. Around him, the boat tilts forward, angling down into the depths. Blow negative. Hydroplanes hard down. Take her to 100 meters. The depth gauge needle swings clockwise. 20 meters, 30, 40. Above them, through the pressure hull, they hear it, the high-speed screws of the destroyer, a mechanical scream growing louder, closer. The sound every U-boat man fears more than anything else in the world. She's right on top of us, the hydrophone operator whispers. The first star shell bursts 200 feet above the surface, 300 yards from where U-264 submerged. Magnesium white light floods the ocean, bright as noon, swaying beneath its parachute. In the sudden illumination, Duncan's lookouts see the swirl of disturbed water, the last bubbles rising from the crash dive. Mark the position! Stand by depth charges! Gretton roars. The destroyer thunders over the dive point at 28 knots. On the stern, ratings grip the depth charge racks, waiting for the order. On each beam, the K-gun depth charge projectors are loaded and armed, stubby mortars that will hurl 300-pound canisters of TNT outward in a spread pattern. Fire! 8 depth charges arc into the night, 2 from the stern racks, 3 from each beam projector. They hit the water at precise intervals, sinking through the darkness. Hartmann has set them for 150 feet, the estimated depth of the diving U-boat. Inside U-264, the world becomes nightmare. The first explosion lifts the entire boat like a toy, slamming men against bulkheads. Light bulbs shatter, glass dials crack. The second charge detonates closer, the pressure wave crushing inward, buckling plates. A rivet pops loose with a sound like a gunshot, and a jet of seawater sprays across the control room. Hull breach in the forward torpedo room. Shut the watertight door. The third, fourth, fifth explosions blend into one continuous thunder. Metal screams, men scream. The boat tumbles sideways, out of control, plunging toward crushed depth. Emergency surface, blow all tanks, Hartman shouts over the chaos. But the high-pressure air system has ruptured. The tanks won't blow. The boat is dying, sinking toward the bottom of the Atlantic with 44 men inside. On the surface, Duncan swings in a tight circle, ASDIC pinging frantically into the depths. The sonar operator presses his headphones tight, listening through the reverberations of the depth charge explosions for the sound of breaking metal, collapsing bulkheads, the death song of a submarine. Contact! Bearing 185, range 600 yards, moving slow. The U-boat is still alive. Wounded, struggling, but alive. Second attack run, Gretton orders. Full pattern, depth setting 200 feet. Duncan heels into the turn, accelerating back toward the ASDIC contact. This time, there will be no escape. The net tightens May 5th, 1943, 0340 hours. Convoy ONS-5. Across 50 square miles of Black Atlantic, the battle has become a slaughter, but not the slaughter Admiral Dönitz intended. Aboard HMS Oribi, the HFDF operator has logged 43 separate U-boat transmissions in the past 4 hours. Every contact has been plotted, analyzed and shared across the escort group's radio network. The invisible wolves are visible now, their positions marked with precision that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. Commander Robert Sherwood, commanding the 3rd Escort Group, studies the plot in Oribi's operations room. The picture is clear and terrifying. At least 30 U-boats surround the convoy, the largest concentration ever assembled. By traditional mathematics, the convoy should already be destroyed. 43 merchant ships against 30 submarines should result in catastrophic losses. But the mathematics have changed. HFDF contact bearing 047, signal strength 4. Very close, sir. Sherwood doesn't hesitate. Action stations, full speed, star shells on that bearing. Oribi leaps forward, her engines screaming. The 4 corvettes with her, Snowflake, Sunflower, Pink and Loose Strife, turn in concert, racing toward the electronic signature. No visual contact, no sonar ping, just the invisible pulse of radio waves captured by the rotating antenna. The star shells burst in sequence, and there, caught in the sudden glare like a deer in headlights, is U-531, trimmed down for surface attack, barely 2 miles from the convoy's flank. Captain Lieutenant Herbert Neckel, on U-531's bridge, sees the star shells bloom and knows with absolute certainty that his boat is dead. There's no time to dive, no time to run. The escorts are already closing at 30 knots, the sea boiling white beneath their bows. Emergency dive, but the British have learned. As U-531's hull slides beneath the surface, Snowflake is already overhead, depth charges preset to shallow settings. The explosions bracket the submarine before she can reach 50 feet. The pressure hull splits like rotten wood. 42 men die in seconds, crushed by water pressure or drowned in the flooding compartments. 3 miles south, U-438 surfaces after a submerged approach, her commander confident in the darkness. The HFDF antenna on HMS Pelican catches the burst transmission as U-438 reports her position to BDU. Pelican turns toward the bearing and accelerates. Visual contact at 300 yards, impossibly close. 10 depth charges in the first pattern, 9 in the second. U-438 implodes at 200 meters depth, her hull crushed flat. No survivors. The pattern repeats across the killing ground. U-boats surface for speed and maneuverability. They transmit to coordinate attacks. The HFDF network triangulates their positions. Destroyers and corvettes pounce with star shells and depth charges. By dawn, 7 U-boats are on the bottom. By noon, 11. In his command center in Paris, Admiral Karl Dönitz stares at the radio logs with incomprehension turning to horror. The attack reports have stopped. The position updates have ceased. Entire boats have simply vanished from the network. Wolfpack Fink is decimated. Wolfpack Star is scattered. Wolfpack Amsel is fleeing westward, abandoning the hunt. For the first time in the war, a concentrated Wolfpack attack has failed catastrophically. Not failed to sink every merchant ship, failed completely, with losses so severe they threaten the entire U-boat arm. At 14:20 hours, May 6, 1943, Dönitz transmits the order he never thought he would send. All boats break off action, retire from convoy routes, return to base. The U-boats turn away from ONS-5, diving deep, running silent. Behind them, 40 of the convoy's 43 merchant ships steam on toward Britain, untouched. The equation has inverted. The hunters have become the hunted, and the weapon that killed them was invisible, radio waves traveling through the darkness, caught and analyzed by machines the German commanders didn't believe could exist. Black May, May 24, 1943, Bay of Biscay. U-752 surfaces at dawn, 70 miles west of Brest. Captain Lieutenant Karl Ernst Schröter needs to make this crossing on the surface. The boat's batteries are nearly dead after 3 days submerged, avoiding the patrols that now infest the Atlantic like plague locusts. Just 6 hours to the safety of the concrete U-boat pens. 6 hours and they're home. The Wannsee radar detector mounted on the conning tower is silent. No radar emissions, no aircraft. Schröter allows himself a thin smile. They've made it. What the Wannsee cannot detect is the new 10-centimeter radar carried by the RAF Liberator circling at 8,000 feet, 15 miles north. The British have changed frequencies, rendering the German warning system blind and useless. On the Liberator's radar scope, U-752 appears as a bright green blip against the darker ocean. Target acquired. Beginning attack run. The Liberator drops from the clouds in a shallow dive, engines throttled back to reduce noise. Schröter doesn't see the aircraft until it's 500 yards away, already lined up on the attack vector. Aircraft, dive, dive! Too late, always too late now. The Liberator roars overhead at 200 feet, and 4 Mark 15 depth bombs tumble from the bomb bay. They hit the water in perfect spacing, 30 feet apart, just as U-752's conning tower slides beneath the surface. The underwater explosions lift the stern of the boat completely out of the water. The pressure hull cracks along a welded seam. The control room floods in seconds. U-752 plunges to the bottom in 300 meters of water, taking all 46 crew with her. May 1943 becomes Black May in U-boat force records. 41 boats lost, nearly 2,000 men dead, the highest loss rate in the entire war. Dönitz pulls his submarines from the North Atlantic convoy routes entirely, an admission of defeat unprecedented in the campaign. The reasons are multiple, overlapping, synergistic. Improved radar that German detectors can't sense. Long-range aircraft closing the mid-Atlantic air gap. More escort carriers providing air cover. Better training, better tactics. But underlying all of it, the foundation of Allied victory is HFDF. By mid-1943, virtually every escort ship in the Atlantic carries the FH-3 receiver. Shore stations in Britain, Iceland, Canada, and Newfoundland provide continuous coverage of the convoy routes. The Admiralty's submarine tracking room in London receives real-time position reports on every U-boat that transmits, plotted on massive wall charts with positions accurate to within 10 miles. The Germans never fully understand what has happened. They know about radar. They develop countermeasures. They know about code breaking, though they refuse to believe Enigma has been compromised. But HFDF remains mostly invisible to them. a technology they theoretically understand but never imagine the Allies can deploy at scale. Dönitz continues to demand radio reports from his boats. Communication discipline deteriorates as commanders, desperate for guidance, transmit more frequently. Every transmission is intercepted, analyzed, plotted. The boats trying to stay invisible become radio beacons, calling down death from destroyers and aircraft they never see coming. The silent service silenced September 20th, 1943, North Atlantic. The convoy routes are nearly empty of U-boats now. Those that remain operate under strict radio silence, transmitting only in emergencies. But silence means isolation. Isolated boats can't coordinate attacks. They can't form wolf packs. They can't overwhelm escort screens with numbers. The night surface attack, the tactic that seemed invincible in 1940, that drove Britain to the edge of starvation in 1942, is finished. U-boats that surface at night are detected by radar and killed before they can fire torpedoes. Those that remain submerged are too slow to catch convoys, too blind to find them. The technology gap has become unbridgeable. Every Allied innovation, centimetric radar, shipborne HFDF, escort carriers, acoustic homing torpedoes, is countered too slowly or not at all. The U-boats are fighting a 1940 war with 1940 weapons against an enemy that has leaped years ahead. In the final accounting, HFDF contributes to the destruction of 24% of all U-boats sunk during the war, 246 boats, over 12,000 men. The technology transforms naval warfare, proving that information can be as lethal as explosives, that invisible electromagnetic waves can kill as surely as torpedoes and depth charges. The U-boat captains thought they were invisible, hunting in darkness beyond the reach of Allied detection. They were wrong. The radio waves they relied upon for coordination became the tracers leading hunters straight to them. The night that seemed to protect them was lit up by transmissions they couldn't stop sending, caught by receivers they didn't know existed, analyzed by systems they couldn't imagine. By war's end, the North Atlantic is an Allied lake. The convoys steam across with minimal losses. The U-boat force is shattered, reduced to scattered survivors operating alone, achieving nothing, dying slowly in waters that once seemed to belong to them. The invisible hunters were hunted by invisible technology, and they never saw it coming.